And for more on what's happening in Colombia with the Farc peace deal, I'm joined by Peter Vincent. He's a former Department of Justice and U.S. Embassy attaché in Colombia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Elaine.
You know, 50 changes or revisions to this original peace deal. It hasn't been that long. Are those changes better, or they really address critics' concerns?
The 50 different changes did, in fact, directly address some of the concerns of former President Alvaro Uribe and his supporters. In fact, Alvaro Uribe and his supporters submitted 500 different suggested changes, but these 50 are substantive in nature, and they do make a number of different changes that should have at least appeased the Alvaro Uribe group.
They still weren't happy, though, didn't show up. What do you make of this? Is it kind of a situation where you just can't please everyone? They just pushed it on through.
I think that's right. It's interesting because I saw President Santos just before the October 2nd referendum. He was in New York, and he made the very powerful point that under Colombian law and under its constitution, he actually did not have to submit the peace accords to the plebiscite, to the people for a vote, that he actually had executive authority as president of Colombia. And now he has taken the step, given the fail on October 2nd by only 57,000 votes, of having Congress, as an indirect democratic process, actually pass these accords. But President Uribe was not happy. He felt that it had not gone far enough in order to sort of quell his concerns and fears.
Well, as you mentioned, the Colombian people voted no on this referendum. This amended deal has pretty much been rubber stamped. It passed through Congress very quickly. What is the sense now among citizens there in Colombia, especially for those who voted against the deal?
I've been on the phone all night with people in Colombia on both sides of the aisle, and I think they are weary of war and they are ready to move forward. The war wounds are so deep in Colombia. People have suffered so much, but I think they're ready to make a move now towards a lasting and durable peace. They're not entirely satisfied, but no one is going to ever be satisfied when it comes to these sorts of peace accords. There will always be folks that are a little bit dissatisfied, and that's certainly the case here. But I think the Colombian people, by and large, even those that opposed in the referendum on October 2nd, are ready to move forward and start a new life in Colombia.
We mentioned it goes to the Constitutional Court next. Any other potential challenges ahead? We've already heard some going back and forth about laying down arms. What do you see happening in the next 6 months?
Although waging war is certainly brutal and awful, it's relatively simple in comparison to keeping the peace, which is beautiful, but very, very complicated. There will be a number of challenges almost instantly with this. There's agrarian reform issues, there's the stopping or cessation of the narco-trafficking, there's reparations for the victims, there is the full participation in the democratic political process by the Farc in Colombia, and then there is the very, very important disarmament and dismobilization of the Farc combatants, over 8,000 of them, who are extraordinarily adept at pulling the trigger of an AK-47 or arming a landmine or engaging in narco-trafficking or kidnapping, but not as skilled in sort of the civilian job skills that one needs in an advanced society. That would be a major challenge for the Colombian government. And again, this is the beginning of the end. The real challenge, the real hard work will go on from this point forward.
Just after that referendum, we learned that President Juan Manuel Santos received the Nobel Peace Prize. He actually travels to Oslo next week to accept the honor. What do you make of this? And what will happen now?
No doubt the committee that awarded the prize was very heartened by the fact that he continued this dialogue and was committed to finding peace for all Colombians. And I think actually awarding him the Nobel Peace Prize shortly after the fail in the referendum on October 2nd actually stimulated the Colombian people to think even more deeply about this particular issue. The real surprise was that the individual on the other side representing the Farc, the leader of the Farc, Rodrigo Londoño, otherwise known by his nom de guerre or alias Timochenko, was also rumored prior to the peace accords to be in the running. But the committee made a very firm stance that President Santos deserved this award for keeping the dialogue going.
And President Santos, in turn, basically said, this is for everybody.
Well, absolutely, Elaine, you're precisely right. In fact, he has committed to using the award monies, about $1 million, to help reparations for the victims of that horrific war that's lasted now over 52 years.
What do you think happens now as this process goes forward? Colombia's government was also talking to the ELN, another rebel group. Can we see some other changes as a result of what's happened with the FARC?
I think we will. I know that now both the ELN and the government of Colombia have committed again to seeking a peace. They hope to have, again, in Quito, Ecuador, talks commence on or about January 10th. It's very dependent on the ELN's release of what we believe to be the final hostage being held by the ELN, Odin Sanchez, a former congressman from the Chocó region. But I think now the ELN has seen the writing on the wall, and they will try to get in step, as the FARC has. And President Santos is under a great deal of pressure to get this done because, of course, he only has about 2 years left in his tenure.
Any lasting thoughts?
You know, my worry, and I think the worries of a lot of people, is that post-conflict societies are extremely vulnerable and fragile. And for the foreseeable future, no matter what, there is a risk that Colombia will step back and backslide into extreme violence. The ceasefire between the FARC and the government of Colombia is already starting to fracture. There have been a number of attacks in the recent weeks. I think time will be the real enemy of this deal because it just the tension is so high right now.
All right, Peter, Vincent, as well as we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Elaine.